Now, before we review or really dive into the next couple of trailers that came out of Netflix within the last few days, Avatar, the epic science fiction classic, was re-released in theaters this past weekend. Of course, this comes as Avatar: The Way of the Water, the sequel to that film, comes out this December. And for all of you that are unsure or don't really remember exactly what Avatar is about, in the 22nd century, mankind colonizes the planet Pandora for a valuable mineral of breeding tension with the Na'vi, the local humanoid population. A disabled Marine joins the Avatar program, which involves operating Na'vi-human hybrids in order to gain the trust of the Na'vi. Film stars Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Stephen Lang, Michelle Rodriguez, and Sigourney Weaver, and it's directed and written by the one and only James Cameron. Now, of course, this movie came out in 2009. I remember it being such a massive deal when it came out. And one of my biggest regrets as a moviegoer, as someone who's loved movies all of his life, was that I never saw Avatar in theaters when it first came out. So when I got I know, I'm shaking my head at myself too. So when I got that chance to see it in theaters, when I found out that it was being re-released, I'm like, I need to get on this. I need to see it in IMAX. And we also end up seeing it in IMAX 3D accidentally. But now the big question is, again, this movie came out in 2009, such a massive deal, billions of dollars made over the course of the last decade or so. Does this movie still hold up over a decade later?
Ooh, oh boy. This is, I think that's a very important question because on multiple levels, you have a lot of movies that have come out even during that time. And when you rewatch them, they don't hold up too well, and I think I was just talking with you, Joe, recently about this, about some of the movies that came out around the 2009, 2012 era, such as the first Avengers. And I even told you that I don't think the first Avengers, I might get slack for this, but it is what it is. I don't think the first movie holds up that well.
Wow, really? I do remember you mentioning that, but that is interesting. That is surprising.
Yeah, the first Avengers. Personally, I don't think it holds up that well, and I can feel it through some dialogue, even some of the camera work, some of the visual effects. I don't think it does. That's just my opinion. However, with Avatar, this movie really does hold up in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. It's a technical marvel, especially from when this movie came out. This came out 2009. That's insane. The technology has evolved over that time when it comes to visual effects and 3D work. And so seeing what James Cameron was able to accomplish back then from a narrative perspective, a story perspective, a theme perspective, and again, some of that still holds up. Dialogue, not so much.
Yeah.
But just
glad you said it.
But just the technicality and the amount of effort and work that was put into this movie. And obviously, I'm not gonna say, and I know people are saying, "Oh, what about Avengers?" No, both did. But I'm just saying, for me at least, when it comes to just how it was all crafted together, and in the final product you see, I think it's on a whole different ball game compared to other films. Unfortunately, to a certain sometimes, and it still holds up in a lot of different ways. And I gotta say, the visual effect and knowing how visual effects have evolved over time with the inclusion of the volume, the newest Unreal Engine that has been used in Mandalorian and etc., LED technology, how that evolved. I think now is honestly an even better time for Cameron to finesse and perfect what Avatar really. How he really initially saw Avatar. Mm-hmm. So, in seeing this movie got me, again, the emotions, the music, it still was there. So I'm equally, if not more excited for Avatar: Way of Water now.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that we talk about how well this movie does hold up. And yes, in so many ways, this movie does hold up very, very well. Again, the biggest thing for me is really, this is the quintessential James Cameron film. It's not his number one best film. For me, that's still Titanic. But this feels the most like a James Cameron film. When I think of James Cameron, Avatar is the first thing that I think of, even before Titanic. Because you could see the amount of care and attention and passion that he had for this film and just how well it holds up over a decade later. The biggest thing that I always felt Avatar had going for it, other than the visual effects, which are groundbreaking, visual effects wouldn't have moved forward if it wasn't for the path that Avatar... or the trail that Avatar blazed, over a decade ago now. But the biggest thing for me is really just, again, how big the film is, the epic scale and size and scope of this movie. And on top of that, like, it's not just like how big the movie is, it's how it pulls you in to that massive world. James Cameron's greatest gift as a filmmaker has always been that immersive, transportive quality. And other than maybe Titanic, no other film of his has really accomplished that like Avatar. I've said 1,000 times on the show, the mark of a great job directing is when you feel like you're in the world of the film. You're not just entertained by it. You don't just feel like it's happening to you. You feel like you're actually there. And Avatar, for that entire 2-hour and 42-minute runtime, I always felt like I was there. And on top of that, seeing it in IMAX, I'm so happy that like I got into IMAX like within the last few years, because this is the quintessential IMAX film, or at least one of the quintessential IMAX films. So I'm so happy.
Definitely one of them.
That I got a chance to watch this, not just in theaters, but in IMAX. And, funny enough, like I said, we accidentally ended up seeing it in 3D. And, I'm kind of happy I got a chance to see it in 3D too. Unfortunately, there are a couple bits throughout like the 3D presentation where like, things just looked a little funky. So I don't think this film was filmed in IMAX 3D cameras, right? It was filmed in IMAX, it was filmed in 3D, but I don't think it was properly optimized for IMAX 3D, because I don't know if it was filmed in IMAX 3D cameras, right? Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I'm not entirely too sure on that. I remember, I think they said that they filmed in IMAX, but I'm not sure about IMAX 3D. But yeah, definitely IMAX is for sure they filmed.
But yeah, but other than that, like I said, there's still so much about this movie that holds up. The scale, the action. I remember thinking to myself, like, okay,
oh, yes.
the movie's going. It starts out, and I'm like, all right, it's still really cool, still this sense of awe and wonder. But like, okay, half an hour in, like, is this movie still going to hold up? When that first chase scene, after they're exploring Pandora, and Jake is being chased by, I don't remember the name of like that, big predatory creature. And, as that's going on, like, he's like, the monster's like tearing through the walls as Jake's like, barely struggling to get through and like fight it off in a way. I'm like, yeah, this movie still holds up. Like, I still felt like that. I felt my stomach like jump up and down, like as that scene was playing out between, just like the editing and like the action and the sound too. Oh my God. This movie, just from a sound perspective too. Because like anytime we think of Avatar, we think of the visuals first, right? Because again, groundbreaking visuals. Of course you would think of that first. But if it's one thing that I saw during that action scene, and really during all the action scenes too, like so much went into the sound of this movie too. Again, this just goes back to what I was saying about like the care and attention and dedication that James Cameron had when putting this film together.
Absolutely, like this man, he's quite the perfectionist sometimes. It just goes to show like how much attention to detail he's willing to put into this. And like I said, this movie still holds up in so many ways. Action, as you said, still stellar to this day. And even watching this action and comparing to other action movies, this still feels even more engaging than other action movies sometimes.
Yeah.
Like that one scene, again, we've all seen it. It's gonna be spoilers. With that one scene where he was getting his first, quintessential dragon in a sense.
Yes.
And then that flying scene, just that entire sequence just felt so immersive, and especially when you later get closer as they're diving down, and you just hear like the oh my God, it just feels like I'm there. And like I said, Avatar still holds up. Still love this movie. One of my favorite sci-fi movies still. And like I said, I'm equally excited for Avatar Way of Water. And honestly, even the third one.
Yeah. Well, we have to see how Way of the Water actually turns out. But yeah, I'm very much in the same boat as you. I still love this movie. I definitely don't regret spending nearly 3 hours, rewatching this old movie. Because again, like so much of it still holds up very well for this movie. Even for the story, too. I feel like the story and the writing gets knocked for this movie. Maybe a little bit more than it deserves. Yeah, dialogue, still a bit clunky in certain regards. But as far as the story, is it technically Pocahontas in space? Kind of, yeah. Does that bother me? Honestly, with how they went about it? No, it really doesn't.
No.
So there's still, again, I still cared about, like, what was going on, like, with the characters and everything. Thematically, there's a lot there. that I think is handled fairly well. I think people have said that, like, the themes are like maybe a little bit heavy-handed. I mean, I can see that argument, but like, again, like how they went about that with the themes and everything didn't really bother me. Performances, I think by and large are still there. Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, I think is terrific, and I even loved Stephen Lang as a villain. He was one of my favorite part. He was probably he might have been my favorite performance in this entire film. I really, really liked what they did with him, and how and what he brought to everything. So for all of you, how do you think Avatar holds up after all these years? And do you plan on seeing The Way of the Water when it comes out in theaters this December? Leave your thoughts wherever it is that you can. And if you like more trips down, cinema memory lane like this one, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to get all notifications, whether you're on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now,